Hi folks, Jeremy Tyler coming to you. Today is March 27th and we'll be distributing this on March 29th. There will be a big data point coming out Friday where PCE will drop and Fed Chair Powell will be speaking. We're not going to cover that in today's video. Specifically today, we're going to talk about the Cape-Shiller, or more accurately, the Shiller PE ratio, and how that lets us know potential overvaluations in the market when things are too expensive. So today let's take a look at the Shiller PE ratio, what that is, and how it could help us value the market at the moment. The definition is simple, which we like. It's a way to track a stock or current index versus its historic value to determine if it is over or undervalued. So really layman for us is it helps us determine if the stock market is expensive or cheap, or if a stock is expensive or cheap. So anytime we're using a oscillator, data point, whatever it might be, to determine if things are overvalued, we want to look at who created that and are they credible. There's a lot of folks that come out with their own oscillators and market adjustment factors, whatever. We'll just go on to Mr. Shiller is definitely credible. He's a current economics professor at Yale University. Go in and talk about specifically in 2013, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for his work in economics. In 2006, he wrote in the Wall Street Journal about the significant risk of recession. A year later, the Lehman Brothers collapse happened. He's got a lot of experience, and his indicator here has proven to be useful several times, so that's why we're looking at it. One of Shiller's studies involved cases of widespread overvaluation by investors. The takeaway here is he actually coined the term irrational exuberance in the stock markets. Prior to Shiller, the assumption was that markets were always rational and that prices were said to be rational, fair. And he started to realize that behavioral finance is a very big part of the markets, and I think we're seeing that right now. AI is the next thing, and people continue to ride that wave up, push it higher and higher, thus the definition of irrational exuberance. So out of the thought process of irrational exuberance by investors is common. That actually led to the discovery of, quote, bubbles, right? Bubbles in the stock market where irrational investors are willing to drive the prices to insane levels, thus creating a bubble that will pop at some point. So let's look back at a chart from history and see if there's some data points that make sense to us in today's world. In looking back to, say, past bubbles or prior recessions, I'm going to keep this chart simple and clean. We'll just point out a few point in times in history here. So if we go back to 1929, Black Tuesday, one of the first infamous crashes of the market. What you'll see here, we're really interested at the rate that the Shiller PE was rising, going into those peaks that you see on the charts. So on Black Tuesday, the Shiller PE was rising at 0.791 points a month for the prior year to the crash, but 0.813 for the prior 6 months to the crash or bubble. The dot-com crash was 0.45 points a month for the year prior to the ultimate demise or bubble. And late 21, we had 0.51 points a month for the year. This data point to me is telling us how quick the valuations are getting stretched. If we come in and look now, the current peak, we are actually at 1.04 points a month for the last 6 months. So that's every since the Fed has been throwing in all the liquidity they can get. They keep telling us that we're in quantitative tightening. We absolutely are not. They're still funding the markets. They're just about out of money to stop doing that. They are helping to stretch these valuations, and that's what leads us to continue to look for data points to help us feel confident we're positioned the right way one way or the other. So in today's presentation, I want to focus on the last 10 years of the Shiller PE and how the market has actually responded when those levels got to certain points. But before we begin that, why don't we look at some really longer term viewpoints so that we can have context of what's a fair value for the Shiller PE ratio. In this first chart that we'll pull up, you'll see that we've highlighted two lines. There's an upper boundary and a lower boundary. This is common for stocks actually to stay within these channels of upper and lower boundaries, whether they're diagonal or horizontal, vertical, I guess is possible. But anyways, you'll see here, it generally trades in a range of somewhere between 10 and 20 because the S&P 500's historical average value is like 17. So if the CAPE is somewhere under 20, it's said to not be anything to be concerned about. So you can see all the way back, most of the time, it trades in that 10 to 20 value, leaving the average value somewhere around 15 or so. So now that we have some context on what an average value is, 15 for the Shiller PE, let's look at where we sit now and what types of values have happened over the last 10 years. I stick to a 10-year time frame because I feel a lot of technological advances have happened. The world is a different place outside of 10 years, so we try to stick in these 10-year charts. The first thing that I want to bring to attention is the value of 30. So we're going to draw a line across here, and you'll see that 30 tends to be kind of, quote, a line in the sand. I use this because in the past, any value over 30 has actually signified a decent pullback is on the way, or even worse, a bubble imploding or recession or something like that. But we'll keep this simple. We're not going to throw in recessions and all those other values. So now that we have 30 as our line in the sand, let's look at data points here. Number one was in 2018. The Shiller CAPE ratio number here was 33.31. And it fell down to 30.97. That was a 7.03% loss at that time. What you'll see below, the purple line indicates the S&P 500. S&P 500. The orange line is the CAPE Shiller ratio. Down below, the market lost 4.44%. Next data point is a 32.62 value on the Shiller ratio, and it fell to 30.20, which was a 7% decline, which translated to an 18.03% drop in the market. So what we're looking for is, does a certain value of a Shiller ratio indicate that things are overpriced? The 30 seems to be pretty consistent. This is not a value that I came up with. It is an economic value that these guys support. So we'll go to our next viewpoint, which was kind of the COVID time frame. We had a Shiller ratio of 30.33, which quickly dropped to 24.82, which was an 18.17% loss in the ratio, translated to a 22.36% loss in the stock markets. And then our most recent figure was coming out of COVID. So you'll see the orange line quickly goes from 24.82, quickly, I guess a year and a half, almost 2 years, runs all the way up to 38.58 in a value, which is obviously the highest value on this chart. But we had the subsequent fall there, down to 27.08 on the Shiller ratio, which was a 29.81% drop. And that cost us 25% on the S&P 500. On this chart that we're looking at, our current value is 33.98 on the Shiller ratio. The stock market has been on a run because of the government injection of liquidity. They have nothing else to stand on at this moment besides to tell you that the market is up. Job losses are increasing. Employment's been a struggle for them. They fudged a lot of the numbers. There's no other way to say this than this is a pumped up rally and very well could be a bubble, and I believe that these values are alluding to that. So we're still sticking to our position, and our accounts are starting to go the right direction, and we'll wait for things to unfold. So in summary, I believe that today's data points show that the S&P 500 is overvalued. If you put the fact on top of that it's over concentrated, we're now down to about 4 stocks holding up the whole market now that we've lost Tesla and Apple. So It's a matter of time. We will stick by our positions. Our accounts are doing well this week. I have for the last couple of weeks here. I think that things are starting to turn. We're going to get that large inflation number. We will have had that by the time you watch this video. My assumption is that data point will show that inflation continues to be sticky, and the Feds absolutely cannot cut rates. Inflation's already out of hand. Therefore, asset prices must come down. We look forward to seeing you the next time. I hope that you got some value out of this video.